Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is the third Ant-Man film, the start of Phase 5 in the MCU. Here, Peyton Reed has returned, the director. He directed the other two Ant-Man movies, Ant-Man 1, Ant-Man 2, and he's back here again, helming the third film. Back again is Paul Rudd as the titular star, Ant-Man. Evangeline Lilly is also back as Hope, who is the Wasp. And also returning is Michael Douglas as Hank Pym, Michelle Pfeiffer as Janet Van Dyne, who we got introduced in the second movie. Now we have a older Cassie Lang who's in this movie, who is played by Catherine Newton, who replaced the other actress who played her. Well, we first saw her in older Cassie back in not Infinity War, Endgame, where we saw the older Cassie there. So you see in this movie, Scott is living, he's high on life right now, enjoying himself. He's a big superhero. After saving the whole universe, everybody knows his name. He's Tobey Maguire walking down the street, raindrops are falling on my head. Just embracing it, taking photos with dogs, everything like that. Just loving life, loving things. But there's a little bit of a strained relationship kind of going on with him and his daughter. The 5 years that he was gone. Plus, there's a little bit of a disconnect. Cassie's, trying to make a difference in the world, trying to help people, trying to save people. And it seems like she thinks that he's kind of been laxed after saving the universe. It's like, well, what have you done lately? It's like, well, damn. I mean, do I have to do something every day? I mean, I did just save the universe. I mean, come on now. I mean, can I just rest a little bit? Like, get a little bit of vacation time, like get a couple months off, maybe a year, but okay.
Yeah. It's moments like that are kind of keeping me from writing this film off entirely, because I think the film's humor, it does get a little bit overbearing at points, but not to the level that it did in something like Love and Thunder. I thought most of the humor here, it comes from these characters just bantering with each other, and it felt more natural here, especially in the first act of this movie.
Yeah. And this movie, it wastes no time kind of getting into things, as it kicks off with right away of the whole family being sent into the quantum realm. And then when they're in the quantum realm, they have to deal with the villainous Kang, who is played by Jonathan Majors in this movie, and trying to fight him and trying to fight their way out in order to go back home. So that is the setup here that you have of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Hello, Dusk. How are you? Thanks for coming in, man. Glad you can make it. So with this movie, it is, there's been, I guess, right now, I think it is the second lowest rated MCU movie, right behind Eternals. But, hey, listen, we got our own opinion on things, and, try not to listen to any outside reviews, anything like that.
Yeah. Those are critics. Those are guys that are paid to do this job. Those are guys that are bought by Disney, supposedly, guys that are trying to sabotage the fucking Disney marketing plan. Here, we are not, our opinion is not beholden to money. Pay us, but it will be.
Yeah. So with this movie, I will say, I mean, my general opinion of the Ant-Man movies in general, they kind of represent Marvel mediocrity. The 1 and 2, it's just kind of a baseline of kind of just going like, hey, it was fine. You got, Paul Rudd, who is likable, and he's still likable here, as Ant-Man. And when you see the family, like as Nick pointed out, all interacting together, when you see Hope, when you see Janet and Hank and Cassie and Scott, when you see all of them, be this family sitting around, I think those are some good moments. And I wish the movie really just focused on that and focused on more of a family superhero adventure movie instead of trying to make this movie big, meaning, big kind of world ending kind of stakes here, because, it's just kind of an Ant-Man movie. And I don't think you really needed that with an Ant-Man movie. I think you could have just done something more small scale, but I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that this is the first movie in Phase 5. So we got to kick off things and we got to make a big impact in that. And, in Kang, Jonathan Majors, who's in this, definitely is one of the major reasons to see this. But
Hmm.
at the same time, I feel like he's the main thing dragging this movie down because it
Hmm.
feels like this whole movie was just built around let's just introduce Kang. That feels like that was just their
Hmm.
whole big setup and the reason for this movie to exist, not to further the characters' stories, not to end some arcs here because this is your third movie. You kind of maybe want to do some of that, to have some resolution. There may be some kind of arc here, arcs of some characters, or introduce new ones and kind of fulfill some of those things. No, it just feels like no, it's just we just kind of just want to introduce Kang, and the other
Hmm.
characters. It's like we don't really have much for them to do. Like you have Evangeline Lilly in this, who's a very good actress, but her
Hmm.
as Hope in this movie, she doesn't really have anything to do. Michael Douglas is Hank Pym, again, also a very talented actor, but it just feels like he just gets reduced to a guy that just loves talking about ants, just saying ants and how much he loves ants and all the thing about ants. Like I swear to God, if you take a drink every time they say ants in this movie, you'd be fucked up. You'd be passed out because I don't think they even said ants this much even in the first two Ant-Man movies. I don't think. I feel like they said that a lot in
I
this.
mean, they got all the ants out of the way when they were doing that promo of the first movie where it's just Paul Rudd and Michael Douglas just snapping.
Yeah, what they were doing the kind of the slapping dance like ants, ants, like which I thought was pretty good. I thought that was kind of good promo for that when they did that. But yeah, I
Mhm.
mean they say that I feel like they say this a lot in this movie is ants and everything like that.
Yeah, it's kind of disappointing because Hank Pym in both Ant-Man movies, he's kind of, I'll say it, he's a fucking asshole to everybody. Everybody kind of hates him outside of Hope, and even she doesn't really particularly like him that much. And here it felt like because they're removing it so far away from previous characters in the movie and even from other characters that Hank Pym has history with, you're kind of taking away a lot of what Hank Pym brings to these movies.
Yeah. Michelle Pfeiffer, who's Janet here in this movie, she has a little bit more to do because when they go to the quantum
Hmm.
realm, obviously she was trapped there for 30 plus years. So she's kind of like the tour guide around here and showing them the things of this in this new world. So she has a little bit more to do than all of some of the other rest of them. But even her, her still I think it's just okay.
Hmm.
You have Catherine Newton, who's Cassie, who I think overall is I think it's just not that strong of what they try to do with her and then some of the
Hmm.
conflict there and that they try to have between her and Scott. It's just not it just feels kind of it's like we got to put in something, to try to generate some stuff for him to do, but I just didn't really feel like that was actual
Yeah.
real conflict. But I'm going to pass it around here. Dusk, what are some of your opinions on Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumanium?
So, well, thanks for having me, guys. Sorry, I'm a little late,
It's
but
great to be
yes,
back, man. It's great
it
to have you
is. It's
back, man.
great
I
to
feel
hear.
like it's been way too long.
It has, and it's great seeing you too, Nick. Really good seeing you. Great to have all three of us again. It's like this movie, I guess.
We're
Everybody
back.
coming together, I guess. Um, I don't do this often, but I decided to take notes while watching the movie.
Wow.
Because I was curious. This is the first Marvel movie that they've released in a while, and I wanted to see, I wonder what's going to happen here.
Hmm.
And after making a lot of notes, I have come to a similar conclusion that Josh has. Uh, the first couple of minutes in the movie, they just a lot of mischaracterizations immediately. It felt like a commercial. Like I was watching like a five
Hmm.
minute commercial. My life's pretty great, but then I have irritable bowel syndrome, and this situation happens. It just felt exactly like that. As soon as you said raindrops on my head, I'm like, yep, Spider-Man 2, same kind of, everything's going all right. Paul Rudd is still likable as Scott.
Hmm.
Like even with the mischaracterizations, like wasn't it Winter Soldier where they said they couldn't do anything as an Avenger to make money? Like there was something legal, something, but I guess
Hmm.
because Scott, that would have been funny if they brought up that Scott he was an Avenger technically, but he never made any specific promises. So that would have been funny, and also would have been showing that he can still grift, so to speak, if he needs to. Scott was never a an ego driven character. So it would have been funny if one of his buddies
Hmm.
from like the security thing had been like, "Dude, promote your book, promote your book." And he's like, "All
See,
right."
yeah, Yeah,
Go ahead.
and that to me is one of the bigger letdowns of the movie because none of the rest of the cast from the previous movies return here. Especially, I feel like so much of the charm of the Ant-Man movies was seeing the camaraderie with, as they've been dubbed online, the Wombats, which were played by Michael Pena, by Ti, and David Dastmalchian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they added a lot of fun. Even his extended family, his ex-wife and the cop boyfriend, then later fiance. Uh, there's one line mentioned earlier on about his your when he's talking to Cassie, your mom wanted me to keep an eye on you. I'm like, oh yeah, how about that? Where is she in this
Where's she at,
mess?
dude?
Where's she at?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're robbing me of Judy Greer, and I'm not happy about it.
Yeah. Dusky, did you have anything else, or you want me to
Sure
pass?
that-
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But with this new Cassie, I mean, she does a fine enough job, but what they kind of gave her to do is kind of what Marvel's been doing a lot lately, which is we're gonna kind of piggyback off of somebody else, and then they're kind of get like a jump start, not quite earn everything, and then they're gonna learn really quickly what took other characters like a full movie or 2 movies to get to skills, or at least close to.
Mhm.
Also, did you notice the actress who plays Cassie? She kept reminding me of Kristen Stewart because she's had the same open mouth syndrome of never being able to close her mouth. She has like a resting open mouth, and I just kept noticing this in my notes. That's in my notes. Like,
God damn. See, I love Catherine Newton. I'm a huge fan of her off of stuff like Freaky, films like even her Paranormal Activity movie that she did with Chris Landon back in the day was one of the few good ones. And I was a huge fan off of Detective Pikachu, even though I think on that movie. And I was kind of excited to see her cast as Cassie Lang, and I think she's doing good with what is written for her. But the problem is there really isn't much written for her, and I think that's kind of what you're going. We have similar issues with this film, and so much of this kind of forgets to put the characters of that the film is about at the forefront, and it feels like a commercial for Kang the Conqueror.
yeah, that's ultimately, well, Kang is probably the best part of this movie. The movie falls apart because of him at the same time. This could have been when you look at the comics and what the quantum realm and all the many possibilities that the quantum realm has, and then you see what's kind of laid out on what the quantum realm is. First of all, science called, and none of this is even none of this, all the suit stuff they're wearing is possible. They get in there at one point, they're not wearing any suits. And I remember distinctly, I don't even know Star Trek that well, but I know a friend who mentioned, because he talks about it, and he goes, "Oh yeah, you can't breathe." Like when there was a point in TNG where some of the characters went in like a tiny ship, and they wanted to leave to help, but they're like, "No, we can't leave the ship because we can't breathe the molecules. The atmosphere, we're too small to breathe in the oxygen molecules, so we have to stay in an enclosed environment. I had to figure the way out." I'm like, "Nah, screw that." We're just taking the helmets off all the time in this super small realm. And I'm gonna be honest, for all the quantum realm has been built up, I was kind of disappointed. It felt like Guardians of the Galaxy, like I was just on a planet.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with this movie. It's like the biggest thing is that this is kind of disappointing because I don't know about you guys, but Josh, you said you weren't a fan of the previous Ant-Man movies, and I really end up liking them. I think both the first and Ant-Man and the Wasp are nice, solid, lighthearted little palate cleansers for me, and a huge part of that was just how much it plays into the strengths of the two leads in that they cast with Paul Rudd and Evangeline Lilly, and getting into slightly smaller stake stories. Huh? See what I did there? And
I mean,
I think it is kind of a cool idea to take a character like that, like Scott Lang's Ant-Man, and put him at the forefront of and put the burden of introducing the next big bad on his shoulders mostly. And like we said before, Jonathan Majors came here to act. He is treating this comic book shit with all of the gravitas of Shakespeare, and I am here for it.
Yeah.
Every moment he's on screen is you just he plays it really well, understated. It's just a shame that he's in this movie where he doesn't. He should be intimidating. People should have died. People should have gotten hurt in this movie in ways that they really don't. And
I
you
mean,
know,
towards the end of the movie, he just said, "You know what? Fuck all this multiverse shit. I'm putting hands on you." And
Oh,
he's
yeah,
kind
it's
of
true.
fucking up Ant-Man.
Yeah.
it's true.
When they go to the quantum realm, when you see it, it doesn't really look that good to me. It clearly looks like they're in front of a green screen. The only time I ever really liked it is when they maybe first drop into it, and when you see Cassie and Scott first drop into it, and you see the sky, and that looks pretty good. But then when you see them walking around, it's like, and the actors, they try to convey this expression on their faces of like, oh my god, this new world, but it just doesn't. I don't think it comes across. There's no real immersion here in this world, and maybe this is a bad comparison, but comparing it to something like Avatar 2, that really felt like this world. You really felt inside of this world and everything like that, and it really felt like a real place, even though it's green screen. A lot of these things are green screen and a lot of stuff that's going on. It just didn't feel that way watching it because of the immersion there, and I don't think this really severely lacks that. And then speaking about when you said Kang and coming towards the ending, it just again has one of those typical Marvel endings that happen, that we've talked about before. There's kind of really nothing new there. They try to build up there, and I thought that was kind of underwhelming. You have some good talent in this movie. Like we mentioned, Bill Murray's in this movie. I think we mentioned that a little bit back. What purpose does he serve to be in this movie? None. I mean, you could have got anybody to be there. And
Oh
to
no,
play
he
stuff.
serves to
It
make
felt
one really awkward joke later on between Michelle Pfeiffer and Michael Douglas. That's what he serves,
mhm.
and it's not even a good joke, and it kind of does some character damage to both characters, but it's there to a quote unquote laugh. That's all he's there for.
Yeah.
It felt like it was there to acknowledge the memes that immediately dropped whenever the first trailer came out, and a lot of that meme was, that Kang fucked Janet, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, that
Yeah.
seems like what it kind of feels like a lot of it. It's just like, I mean, talented actor like that, and then you just kind of just like, I mean, kind of waste him. I feel like in here, like I said, I do like Paul Rudd. I think he is good here again as Ant-Man. I just don't think, he's always better to me a part of an ensemble when you see him in other things. And I think to kind of waste Kang in here it was kind of a bad decision because we really didn't see, like, comparing if you're going to set up Kang as being this new big bad, this new big threat for the MCU,
Yeah.
because they are going to do the next Avengers movie is going to be Avengers Kang Dynasty, right? Is
Yes.
that you didn't really see Thanos. I mean, you saw him in the Stingers, but you didn't really see him full, fledged as a character up until Infinity War, up until when he was already, already this, presented as this main antagonist in the big team up movie. And then when you first see him, he's deboing Hulk and he's choking out Loki and he's doing this. Like he's already, boom, automatically already a good threat for them to face. It's like, man, what are they going to do? How are they going to fight this guy? And Jonathan Majors is delivering a good performance, and he does feel threatening. But I think it kind of loses that kind of at the end, and we're going to talk about that when we talk about a little bit of a slight spoiler talk, and then we get into full spoilers when we do it Monday. But so how did you all feel about that of presenting this movie, presenting Kang as being this new big bad? How did you feel about that?
Well, I think it is kind of interesting because this isn't even like this might not even necessarily be the Kang that we see in Kang Dynasty, because that character is so rooted in the multiverse that the Avengers have fought like hundreds of variants of him throughout history, and that is something really fascinating. I think that's what drew Jonathan Majors to this part. Even speculations of what we'd see in Loki, which this is more closely tied to than anything else. But he is bringing so much screen presence and so much a charm and menace to the role of Kang that even in spite of all the flaws that this movie has, I'm excited to see him continue in this role and see him play around with different variants.
Dusk, what's some of your thoughts there?
Uh, when it comes to Kang, I think the actor does a much better job here than when he was first introduced in Loki.
Hmm.
I think he has the appropriate amount of gravitas, and he is treating this like a legitimate Shakespeare. And as someone who is actually a fan of early Thor one,
Hmm.
I'm happy to have that kind of serious but with some fun moment here that levy it out. To me, that this whole movie, unfortunately, just doesn't fulfill his character, and I think it was actually a big mistake to have it be his introduction in this one. The Quantum Realm was such a very interesting place in the comics. Heck, the Fantastic Four go there back and forth and go on to really crazy scientific adventures through this, and as well as Ant-Man and other characters. So, and the Quantum Realm, it depends on where you even land up and what visuals change. This should have been an alien-like place with very confusing rules and should be both wondrous but also kind of terrifying, almost like an Eldritch sense
Hmm.
that we have no idea what's going on. Paul Rudd can still be comedic, but it would have been nice. I mean, honestly, I do think he and Hope could have been this nice duo that kind of keep each other centered, but are in really a bad situation. Like Paul Rudd could fit in that role of like a lower, like the the small guy, pun intended, the small guy's Iron Man, the local level kind
Hmm.
of guy who just gets introduced in this bigger level. Michael Douglas should have been brought up. Michael Douglas has been studying this stuff for years. The fact he's super underutilized as Ant Man would have been nice in this movie to finally get him utilizing his old suit, even if it like did damage to him.
Hmm.
There's just a lot of continuity and consistency that they just ignore in this movie, and even from the previous ones. And I think ultimately it just becomes a letdown, and just a lot of they don't let characters breathe, and they also create an environment that's just ultimately unfortunately bland. And I want it, but there's kernels of moments where characters
Hmm.
have fun interactions with other characters where I can't completely throw away the movie because they're
Hmm.
there.
Hmm.
And that's the biggest disappointment for me. That's the biggest hurt. It's like it's there. There. It could have been a serious but fun movie that stepped up and showed off this like the Kang as this whole idea, and Kang
Hmm.
barely showing up at the very end and having his gravitas, but he doesn't, and he just leaves, and that sets everything up, and they get a glimpse of what's going to happen, but
Yeah.
the movie does what it does.
Yeah.
I don't
More
know how
as
you guys feel about it.
more as a looming presence, up
Yeah.
until we
Hmm.
get to see him maybe in his full fledged power.
Yeah.
And I get you maybe want to set him up and maybe because maybe it takes a little bit more work for him than it maybe would be Thanos. In
Hmm.
these movies, a lot of these movies, they're pieces to a bigger puzzle. It's like you don't
Hmm.
ever really watch one of these just to watch it isolated by itself. You watch it because it's going to lead into sometimes something else, and then that can be hugely detrimental. That was one of the problems I had with Wakanda Forever, was that you bring in Julia Louis-Dreyfus's character because okay, we got to throw her in here because she has to set up her thing for the Thunderbolts. Then we got to throw in Riri Williams because she's got her Disney Plus show coming out, so let's jam her in here, and it's just taken away from all this other stuff that you could have given out more time to all these characters that we already know, and it's their movie. It's Shuri's movie. It's also Namor and M'Baku and the
Hmm.
citizens of Wakanda and all this other stuff. It just took away time from all that. And with this, it's just like there's so much time dedicated to Kang and introducing this character, and when he shows up, he makes his presence, and that's to me is when the movie does get really, really good, or start to get kind of good when you see the interactions between him and Ant Man. But it's just it just doesn't it just doesn't mean anything because it's like this also a lot of all this other stuff that's just feels like all these other characters that we known from all these other two movies and these other team up movies, they get way thrown to the wayside and they got nothing for them to do.
Hmm.
And that's kind of the big
Hmm.
problem. And then when you meet some of the citizens of the quantum realm, or they have their they don't really feel it feels like they're trying to do a little bit of like Ragnarokish kind of stuff there.
Hmm.
And I think it's like very, very poor man's great value type Ragnarok type situation they try to do there. What did you think about the quantum realm stuff and some of the people they meet in the quantum realm? What did you think about that there, Nick?
Yeah, the quantum realm in comics, it's kind of this. this psychedelic nightmarescape depending on what part you land in.
Exactly.
Because even the parts that we've seen before in the first Ant-Man and in Ant-Man and the Wasp, we're in a completely different world, and it just feels like they went to another planet, which it should be much weirder than it is, because outside of a couple odd character designs and really fascinating looking background stuff, there's really not much to the quantum realm. It's like rules should feel very loose. This place should be terrifying, and it just feels like a Star Wars set.
Feels like a Spy Kids set. Like, it's something you see like
Yes,
Spy
thank
Kids.
you.
You know, it really. I mean, it's like some
Like,
Spy
I was
Kids.
I was trying to fight I was trying to fight that comparison, but I was watching the movie today and I said, "God damn, this shit does look like Spy Kids 3D."
I mean, there's a
That's
character.
in my notes, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, there's a character who's got a who's like broccoli. He looks like broccoli. It's like, what the hell is like? This is like, I mean, what like just
And
throwing it like what?
And the most disappointing thing is it's just for a visual gag. And most of these characters that you see just in the background, they are pretty much just visual gags.
Yeah. And then the stuff they do with like some of the technology and the ships, like it's supposed to be like this weird kind of gooey type stuff. You know what I mean? Like, you know, kind of visual gag type stuff. I think that's also kind of very kiddish that they do there. It's childish stuff they do there. Yeah. I think, you know, this is kind of one of the more weaker entries of the MCU stuff so far that we've kind of seen. So I kind of understand what some of the people are saying. You know, I don't think it's, you know, the worst movie I've ever seen or anything like that, or, you know, or anything like that, or maybe the worst MCU movie. But it feels like you know, just a movie that, like I said, it's only here to set up Kang, and it feels like the only mission that it was out to set out to do, and it kind of falls under the weight of that. And you know, kind of compared to something like if you ever seen Iron Man 2, like a lot of people when Iron Man 2 came out, a lot of people was like, well, this is just a commercial for the Avengers. It's like that's all that movie felt like. It's like it's just for the commercial for that, and this just feels like it's a commercial for, you know, what we're gonna do with Kang Dynasty and all that. You could have done a good parallel between, you know, I think Hope and with Scott, the fact like she was in a similar position Cassie was in, because her mother was gone for 30 years. He was gone for 5 years and he wasn't there for Cassie. He could have, you know, given her and talked to her about advice of like, how do I get through to her? And, you know, because they try to do, like I said, a strained relationship between him and his daughter. That just doesn't work, because what are we supposed to believe about Scott Lang as a character now? Are we supposed to believe that all of a sudden he's like a bad guy, that he's not a hero anymore? No, we don't believe that. So what's the arc for him in this movie? Dust, you were saying something? You gonna say something?
No, I was agreeing with you. Yeah, that's an excellent point. Hope has been through. They even bring it up where Hope waited for her mother for years. A lot of her character was the fact that Janet wasn't in her life. And Paul Rudd is like 5 years. There could have been like a great scene where Hope's just saying like 5 years isn't 30. You like, it's okay. Like she's just going through a little bit of rebellion, but you're here and you care, and she knows you care. She's just trying to find her place in things. That's like, yeah, and like having Hope in that family dynamic is one of the best parts of the Ant-Man movies anyways. And yeah, they just unfortunately, as much even as Janet's character is propped up to the forefront, ultimately she doesn't really do much in the movie either. They just kind of they prop her up as she did stuff like 30 years ago, and you're like, okay,
Yeah.
well, what about now?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, she even the little stuff they give her is like, yeah, it's still not all that good. So I think I'm just gonna give it. For me, I'm gonna lowish kind of stream it. For me, is where I'm at with it. Nick, what about you?
Yeah, me, I was probably the biggest fan of the previous two Ant-Man films, because even though those are very very lighthearted, very kind of low stakes crime capers in the MCU, a lot of the charm of those movies was rooted in in Paul Rudd's portrayal of Scott Lang, and how he interacted with all the other characters, especially Evangeline Lilly and Michael Douglas, and then later in the second film, even Michelle Pfeiffer. And here, I feel like the biggest problem with this is that so much of the character relationships take a backseat to let's introduce the new big bad, who, as great as Jonathan Majors is, as menacing as he is as Kang the Conqueror, it feels like it belongs in a different film, in a different movie, and that this film doesn't really have any focus towards his characters, which is one of the more disappointing things. I don't know if this is the weakest film in the MCU because I have seen it just so recently, but it's the first one where I haven't had a desire to rewatch it.
Yeah, yeah, not a lot of the strong.
Even something like even something like Eternals, which is a movie I wasn't crazy about when I first saw, but have come to love it more and more as time as it went on. I don't feel that with this film. I'd give this possibly the lowest stream it, which is a first for me because I'm a huge shill for Marvel.
Yeah. Dusk. What's some of your thoughts?
I'm pretty sitting on where you are, Josh. I didn't hate this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't despise it. This was crap. But it does have a lot of flaws, and it's not, unfortunately, it's such a mixed bag that there's some things that, small moments where they're like, okay, this is good. Okay, this is visually kind of interesting. Oh, I like the little thing they did here. But as time kind of goes on, and I look at my notes, and I remember where I watched it, I'm just like, yeah, that doesn't make up the sum of all parts in this movie. Where you're right, the characters, they're not continuous with the previous movies. They don't get not given much to do. It's basically a commercial for Kang the Conqueror, and not even the best setup they could do with that. So at the end of the day, I had to kind of ask yourself, well, what's the point then? What was the point of this movie? And if it's just to set up the Kang, then why do we even bother with Ant-Man and his crew when they have a very specific niche, a good niche, but a very specific niche within the Marvel characters? And yeah, because of that, I have to give it a really, really, really low stream it, bordering on a skip it. Because ultimately, you can just watch the YouTube clips of Jonathan Majors, and that'll be all you need to know about the character setup, and that's okay. Because really, that's about it. Everything else, Cassie's relationship and the strained in quotes relationship with Scott doesn't feel legitimate. Because, like you said, Josh, we know he helped save half the universe. He put in the work. He put in the time. He did everything he could. And now, just because he's resting on his laurels a little bit and being like, "Hey, I want to have a normal life," and she's like, "There's still problems out there." I'm like, "Okay, we'll figure that in time." Like, what? Can I just enjoy dinner? Damn. And Michelle Pfeiffer and Michael Douglas, they're great actors, but Hank Pym is such a fascinating character in the Marvel comics. He's really an interesting character, and even throughout most of the MCU, I felt they really underutilized him as a character. And in this one, all they've got for him is, "I like ants." Yeah. And you're like, all right, man. And Michelle Pfeiffer, they're like, "Oh, I was down here 30 years.
Yeah, that's it.
I made a mistake." Yeah, and then Hope's just there. She
pretty much.
Poor Evangeline Lilly. She's just, I'm just here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can't.
She was an anti-vaxxer. Fuck her.
I mean, her big character arc in this is she got a haircut. She got a new haircut. That's it. She has a new haircut. That's her.
That's true.
That's her.
True.
Oh no.
Hair changes every movie.
She has two. Changing her hair, which doesn't really look good in this movie. I'm gonna be honest. And two, it's okay, but yeah, I preferred her other hairs. And two, forgiving her mom for mistakes that she made.
Yeah.
That's about it. Hey, it's okay.
Yeah. So that's it.
It's okay that you did some horrible stuff 30 years ago. It's okay.
Yeah. Well, she didn't even. Well, I guess we'll get into it in the spoiler talk, but
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. So
I don't know.
3 low streamits, 1 bordering on a skip it
Mm-hmm.
for Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania.